I'm a 32-year-old American from Michigan, and last year I spent 2 weeks completely alone in an Airbnb in Copacabana. I came to Brazil to escape, not for a vacation, not for adventure, just to disappear for a while. My life back home had crumbled fast, a breakup, a job I hated, and a feeling I couldn't shake. Like I was wasting time that wasn't even mine. So when I saw a cheap Airbnb listed in the heart of Rio, I booked it without thinking twice. It was tucked away on a narrow street called Rua Aires Saldana, a few blocks from the beach. The building was old, thick gates, rust on the mailbox, graffiti on the intercom. The doorman barely looked at me when I arrived, just buzzed me in like he didn't want to know I was there. The elevator felt like something from a movie, slow, shaky, and groaning all the way up to the 7th floor. Apartment 7-3. The door was metal, painted a faded green, with a dent near the handle and a number hanging by a single screw. Inside, the place looked just like the listing, maybe too much like it. Like the host had carefully hidden anything that made the apartment feel alive. There were no personal touches. Just bare furniture, cold lighting, stiff curtains that didn't close all the way, and a full-length mirror in the hallway that made the space feel tighter than it should have. I dropped my bag and sat on the couch. It was hard, worn, and creaked when I leaned back. Outside, I heard the buzz of traffic, a dog barking, someone shouting down the street. But inside the apartment, nothing. Total silence. I noticed it almost immediately. No TVs through the walls, no footsteps upstairs, no plumbing noises, no neighbors chatting on balconies. For such a dense building in a city like Rio, the silence felt impossible. I brushed it off. New place, new country, long flight. I was probably just overthinking things. But later that night, right before bed, I passed the mirror again, and I thought I saw something flicker behind me. A quick pulse of light, like someone turned on a hallway lamp for a second. When I turned around, the apartment was exactly the same. But when I woke up at 3:17 a.m. and heard a slow, deliberate knock from inside the wardrobe, that's when I knew I wasn't alone. I didn't move. For at least a full minute, I just laid there, frozen, staring at the ceiling with my breath caught in my chest. 3 knocks. Slow, spaced, coming from inside the wardrobe. It wasn't the old wooden kind either. It was one of those cheap sliding door wardrobes with thin panels and aluminum tracks. There was no way anyone could fit in there, I knew that, but still. I didn't open it. Instead, I sat up slowly, turned on the lamp and stared at it from the bed. The doors weren't moving, no sound, nothing. After about 10 minutes, I finally got up, crept over barefoot, and pulled one of the doors open. Empty. Just my backpack, a couple of shirts on hangers, and a faint smell of damp wood. I checked the bottom, pushed the clothes aside. Nothing. I left the light on and went back to bed. The next morning, the city felt louder. Car horns, street vendors, someone yelling across the street in Portuguese I didn't understand. It was like the silence from the night before had been a trick. The city reminding me I wasn't dreaming. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was the building shifting. Maybe someone in the apartment next door banged on the wall. Maybe I was just overtired. Still, when I walked past the mirror again, I felt my stomach tighten. That mirror was starting to bother me. It didn't reflect the hallway quite right. I know that sounds insane, but something about the angle was off. When I stood in front of it, the hallway behind me looked longer than it should have been. Darker, like the light from the ceiling wasn't reaching all the way. That night, I closed the wardrobe before bed and angled a chair against the door, just to be sure. At 3:08 a.m., I woke up again. No sound this time, no knock, just a weird feeling like someone was in the room with me, breathing slow and steady. I turned on the lamp and scanned every corner. Then I noticed something. The mirror, it was slightly tilted, like someone had touched it. Not bumped it, touched it. The wardrobe was still closed. The chair hadn't moved. But now I couldn't stop staring at that mirror. I wanted to cover it, break it, turn it around. Instead, I stood in front of it. and the hallway behind me looked completely dark. I didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, I asked the doorman if anyone lived in apartment 702, the unit directly next to mine. He looked at me confused, then mumbled something in Portuguese. I didn't understand a word, but his face said enough. Don't ask again. The hallway outside 703 had always felt lifeless. No voices, no music, not even footsteps. But that day, as I stepped out to get some fresh air, I noticed something new. The door to 702 was slightly open. Not wide open, just ajar. Enough to notice. There was no sound coming from inside, no light, just darkness and a faint smell like burnt plastic. I walked past it quickly. Later that night, I was on my phone in bed when the lights in my apartment flickered once, twice, then died. Total blackout. The ceiling fan slowed to a stop. The lamp blinked out. Even the cheap digital clock beside the bed froze. Only the street lights outside gave a bit of glow through the thin curtains. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight. The mirror in the hallway reflected the beam back at me, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shape standing behind me. Not a person, a silhouette, faint, tall, unmoving. But when I spun around, there was nothing. I moved to the front door, thinking maybe the power had gone out in the whole building. But as I looked through the peephole, I froze. The hallway was dark, except for one thing. The door to 702, the one that had been slightly open earlier, was now wide open, and light was spilling out from inside. A strange, flickering blue light, almost like a strobe, but slower, inconsistent. And there was a sound, barely audible, like static. I pressed my ear to the door, my own, not 702. The air felt heavy, thick. My skin was starting to prickle. Then, out of nowhere, the light in my apartment snapped back on, all at once, bright, harsh, buzzing. I jumped back. The mirror, now fully lit, was clean. Too clean. As if someone had wiped it while I was looking the other way. And when I turned toward the wardrobe, I saw the chair I had wedged against the door was now lying on the floor, on the opposite side of the room. I hadn't heard it fall. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flickering blue light from 702, that hallway, that silhouette in the mirror, that chair, somehow moved across the room without a sound. By the next day, I was done trying to explain things. I didn't go out. I didn't eat. I just sat on the couch, phone in hand, refreshing the Airbnb app, trying to convince myself to leave, but something kept me there. Not fear, confusion. I had to know if it was in my head. That night, just past midnight, I turned off all the lights on purpose and sat in front of the mirror with only the hallway light on behind me. I stared at the reflection for what felt like hours. And eventually, I saw it. A small movement in the hallway behind me. In the reflection, not in real life. Like something shifted just outside of view, a soft blur, like a shadow stretching against the wall. But when I turned around, the hallway was empty. Then, a sound. Not a knock this time. A scratch. From inside the wall, behind the wardrobe. It was soft at first, repetitive, almost like nails dragging across wood. Then it stopped. I got up, grabbed my phone, and recorded a voice memo. I don't even know why, maybe to prove to myself I wasn't losing it. Then, out of instinct, I moved the wardrobe. It was heavier than it looked, and as I dragged it aside, dust fell from the top, and something sharp scraped my arm. Behind it was a large patch of wall that looked newer than the rest. Clean plaster, no paint, no mold like the rest of the apartment. And in the center of that plaster was a small hole. Not accidental, not random, deliberate. I crouched down and looked through it. At first, nothing, just darkness. Then a light, faint and pulsing, blue, and behind that light a figure, standing perfectly still, facing the hole, facing me. I fell back, hit my head on the edge of the wardrobe, and scrambled out of the room gasping. I locked the bedroom door, turned on every light I could, and sat against the wall, heart pounding in my chest. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't sleep again in that apartment. I left before sunrise. All was now showered. Didn't shower, didn't pack properly, just shoved everything into my suitcase and got out. The hallway was still silent. But the door to 702 was now shut, completely. Not a crack of light, no sound. Like it had never been open. I took the stairs. When I reached the lobby, the doorman wasn't at his desk. The chair was empty, the small TV that was always on, silent. I pushed the front gate open and stepped out into the early light of Copacabana. It felt like I had emerged from somewhere deep underground. The city was waking up, people walking dogs, opening cafes, washing sidewalks. But I didn't feel part of it. I felt like I had escaped something no one else could see. I messaged the Airbnb host, told him there was a problem with the apartment and I wouldn't be staying the full 2 weeks. He replied 2 hours later, "Sorry to hear that. Just so you know, you're the only guest who's ever lasted more than one night in 703. I didn't respond. I checked into a hotel near Lem and spent the rest of the week trying to feel normal again. Sun, sand, overpriced caipirinhas. But it didn't help, because even in the hotel room, even in broad daylight, I kept checking the mirrors. Every single one. And every time I looked, I swear I could feel something just outside of the reflection. Wait, watching. I'm a 29-year-old French writer, and 2 months ago I stayed alone in a house perched high above Santa Teresa in Rio de Janeiro. The house belonged to a Brazilian couple I had met briefly during a writer's residency in Lisbon. When they found out I was coming to Brazil, they offered me their place for a week while they traveled up north. "It's perfect for writing," they said, "quiet, peaceful, full of light." I accepted immediately. I had spent too long stuck in airports, cafes, and crowded hotels. I needed stillness, something away from the chaos of the city. And from the balcony of that house, I could see the entire curve of Rio stretched beneath me. The old tram tracks, the dense trees, the ocean far beyond. It felt like I was in a painting, quiet, suspended, timeless. The house was beautiful, but strange. Not in a haunted way, not at first. It was an old colonial home. Tall ceilings, wooden floors, wide doorways. The kind of house that echoes when you speak. The kind that always seems to breathe just a little when you're not looking. It had personality, too much of it maybe. There were paintings everywhere, mostly abstract. Dark colors, chaotic lines, and faces that were half-finished or smeared. One entire wall was covered in masks. African, indigenous, theatrical. I stopped counting after 30. The bedroom had floor-to-ceiling windows with sheer white curtains that moved even when the air was still. And in the hallway outside the bedroom there was an old grandfather clock. It didn't work. But every night at exactly 2 a.m. I heard the tick. Not ticking, just one isolated tick. At first, I assumed it came from outside, maybe a pipe or a piece of wood settling. Old houses do that. But it was always the same time. The second night, I got out of bed and walked down the hall barefoot in the dark. The moonlight lit the floor just enough for me to see. When I reached the clock, it was silent, frozen at 11:46, just like before. I touched the glass. It was warm, and behind me I heard the soft rustle of curtains, but all the windows were closed. By the third night, I stopped telling myself it was just the house settling. At exactly 2 a.m., I was awake, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. No music, no storm, no distractions. I waited for it. And it came. One single tick. I got out of bed again, barefoot on the cold wooden floor, and walked down the hallway. The same moonlight. The same silence. The grandfather clock was still frozen at 11:46. But the glass was cold this time. Ice cold, like something had drained the warmth out of it. I turned back toward the bedroom and stopped. One of the masks was missing. There had been a long row of them across the hallway wall, and I knew them well by now. Each night they stared at me as I passed, but now there was a gap, an empty hook. I looked around slowly, and then I saw it. The mask was on the floor, face down, just beneath the painting of the red spiral. You touch it. I didn't want to. Instead, I turned on every light in the house, one by one. Kitchen, hallway, bedroom, even the outside patio. I told myself I'd find a reasonable explanation in the morning, but something felt wrong with the house now. I started to notice small things that hadn't been there before. A hairline crack running down the bathroom mirror. The sound of shuffling, soft but rhythmic, coming from the attic above the bedroom, even though the owners had told me it was sealed shut. And the paintings, one of them had changed. It was the one near the dining table. Dark green, almost black, with what looked like a figure in the background. I had studied that painting the first day. The figure had no face. Now it had one. It wasn't detailed, just two dark smudges where the eyes should be, and a mouth, wide and gray. It could have been my imagination. I wanted it to be. But that night I took a photo of it with my phone, just in case. I turned off the lights and forced myself to sleep. But at 2 a.m. I woke up gasping, not from a sound, not from a dream, from a feeling like something was watching me from the hallway. I spent the next morning trying to convince myself I was overreacting. I opened every door, every drawer, every closet. I tapped on the walls, pulled the curtains wide open, even climbed on a chair to inspect the attic trapdoor. It was sealed shut with a rusted chain. No way anything could move up there. I almost laughed at myself. Almost. Then I checked the painting, the one I had photographed the night before. The photo was the same, dark figure, smudged face, empty eyes. But the painting on the wall wasn't. The smudges were deeper now, more defined. The mouth had lengthened, stretched sideways like it was trying to speak. I stood there, holding my phone up, comparing both images side by side. It had changed. I backed away slowly and bumped into something behind me. It was the mask. The same one that had fallen the night before. It was now leaning against the wall, upright, facing me. I hadn't touched it. I locked myself in the bedroom for the rest of the afternoon. Didn't write. Didn't eat. I sat on the bed, blinds closed, phone on silent. I wanted to leave. I really did. But I couldn't explain why. Maybe I felt like I needed to see it through. Maybe I was waiting for confirmation that I wasn't losing my mind. That night the power went out. No storm, no wind, just darkness. Total. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and walked through the hallway again. Slow, shaking, praying that the lights would come back. That's when I saw it. In the middle of the living room floor, carved into the wood, was a spiral. Perfect, deep, burned into the planks. Exactly like the one in the painting. I stood there, frozen, phone shaking in my hand. The beam of light flickered as the battery dipped below 10%. Then the grandfather clock ticked. But this time twice. Tick, tick. And from the back of the house I heard something fall. A heavy, dragging thud, like a chair being pulled across the floor. But I hadn't moved any chairs. I turned slowly, the flashlight cutting through the darkness toward the dining room, and one of the chairs was gone. I couldn't find the chair. It wasn't in the dining room or the kitchen or on the patio. It had vanished completely. But something had taken its place. On the floor, exactly where the chair had been, was another spiral. not burned like before. This one was drawn in ash, carefully, precisely, still fresh like someone had made it minutes ago. I stepped back and nearly tripped over the rug. That's when I decided to leave. I didn't care if it was midnight, I didn't care if the power was still out. I wasn't going to spend another second in that place. I packed my bag in silence, heart pounding so loud it felt like a second pulse in my head. Every time I turned around, I expected something to be behind me. The masks on the wall felt like they were watching me. The paintings seemed darker than before. The house was breathing again. I was halfway to the front door when the floorboards creaked. Behind me. I turned. Nothing. But when I looked down the hallway, I saw it. The bedroom door was wide open. I had closed it, I was sure. Inside, the curtains were fluttering wildly, even though every window was shut. And in the center of the room was the chair, facing the bed. I don't know what made me walk toward it. Curiosity, defiance, madness. As I stepped into the room, my phone vibrated in my pocket. One notification. It was the Airbnb app. Did you enjoy your third night? Rate your stay. I froze. Then I heard it, from beneath the bed, breathing. Not soft, not human. Wet, slow, labored like lungs filled with mud. I didn't look, I didn't speak. I just backed out of the room, shut the door, and bolted. As I passed the hallway mirror, I caught my reflection for a split second. And there was someone behind me. Tall, thin, wearing one of the masks. No eyes. I didn't waste that night. I tried. I packed again, opened the front door, even took one step outside. But the street was darker than it should have been. The city, silent. No dogs, no traffic, no sirens, like the house had swallowed the neighborhood. I stepped back inside and locked the door, and I waited for morning. At 6:15 a.m., the power came back. Just like that. Lights buzzed to life, the fridge hummed, my phone reconnected to Wi-Fi. But something had changed. The spiral on the floor was gone. The mask had returned to the wall, and the painting, the one by the dining table, was now completely black. I didn't pack again. I didn't need to. I walked out as soon as the sun rose high enough to cast shadows on the street. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't leave a note. The owners messaged me that afternoon thanking me for watering their plants. I hadn't. They said I left everything in perfect order. I didn't. They also sent me a photo of the hallway just to show how well I kept the place. And in the photo, one of the masks was missing. The one I saw in the mirror. The one with no eyes. I never replied. I stayed in a hostel for the rest of the trip, surrounded by people, noise, laughter, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw the spiral. I still do. Sometimes, right before I wake up, I hear it again. That old broken clock. Tick, tick,